The man accidentally stuck his finger into a paper shredder. Blood instantly poured through the gaps between his fingers. The searing pain made him lose his composure in an instant. He thought he was going to lose at least one finger, but no one could have expected what happened next. His co-workers rushed over after hearing his scream, but when they saw the mangled bloody wound, everyone simply stood there calmly. There was neither fear nor sympathy on their faces. It was as if everything happening before them wasn't worth feeling anything about. Gradually, Andreas lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he discovered that he was already back in his apartment. Although he could still feel blood seeping beneath the bandage, he couldn't feel any pain from the wound. When he removed the bandage, he froze in complete shock. Not only had his finger completely grown back, but even the scars on his skin were disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. At that moment, Andreas finally realized that he no longer belonged to the world of ordinary people. Everything was connected to what had happened the day before. Just one day earlier, for the 40-year-old Andreas, life no longer seemed to hold anything worth living for. He took one last look at the world, then threw himself onto the railway tracks without hesitation. He thought death was waiting for him, but he had no idea that the real nightmare was only beginning. When he woke up again, he found himself alone on an empty bus. Andreas had no idea where he was, or where the bus was taking him. Before long, the bus stopped in the middle of a barren wasteland. The only thing there was a long-abandoned gas station. A large welcome sign was displayed across it. Just as Andreas stood there in confusion, an elderly man opened the bus door for him. The two of them then headed toward the city. Along the way, they passed through lonely plains and vast rice fields. They even saw people living peaceful, ordinary lives. After driving for what felt like an eternity, the car finally stopped in front of an apartment building. The old man told him that the room at the end of the second floor was his. He then handed Andreas a key and reminded him to report to Shin Company the next day. Andreas had no idea what was happening, but faced with such a luxurious apartment, he decided to settle in first and look for answers later. The next day, he arrived at his new workplace on time. His boss and co-workers were exceptionally friendly. Before he had even started working, his boss paid him 6 months' salary in advance. Andreas couldn't believe something this good could happen. He thought he had arrived in heaven. He finished the simple tasks in no time. By noon, his workday was already over. When he arrived in the bustling city streets, he noticed that everyone was coldly hurrying toward their destinations. Not long after, he made another shocking discovery. A man was hanging from a fence by the roadside. What disturbed him even more was that none of the passers-by showed any curiosity or fear. It was as if they had long grown used to such things. The workers cleaned up the scene with emotionless efficiency. He felt that everything was strange, yet he couldn't explain exactly what was wrong. That evening, still full of questions, Andreas went to a bar, hoping to ease his anxious mind. To his surprise, however, no matter how many drinks he had, he never got drunk. It was like drinking glass after glass of plain water. While using the restroom, he accidentally overheard someone making the exact same complaint. In this place, not only could no one get drunk, but food had absolutely no taste either. Only then did he finally realize that he wasn't the only one experiencing this. So Andreas secretly followed the man, hoping to uncover the rules of this world. Although it was only 8 o'clock, the streets were already completely deserted. Before long, he followed the man to a basement. But the moment Andreas approached the window, the lights inside went out. A series of eerie melodies drifted out from within. Andreas failed to uncover the truth he was looking for, so he returned home and prepared himself a late-night meal. But the delicious-looking food before him was exactly as the man had described. He couldn't taste even the slightest bit of flavor. It seemed that every human sense had vanished in this place. Andreas couldn't help but wonder, was this a false paradise, or was it actually hell? So early the next morning, Andreas hurriedly got into his car and drove back to the gas station where he had first been picked up. He hid behind a large rock and patiently watched. Sure enough, the mysterious bus appeared once again. It brought another group of unfamiliar newcomers. This made Andreas even more certain that the exact same events were repeating here every single day. Without hesitation, Andreas immediately got back into his car and gave chase. But before he could get very far, the eerie bus suddenly vanished into thin air. Even the tire tracks abruptly came to an end, as if the bus had never existed at all. The very first lead in his investigation had completely disappeared. Left with no other choice, Andreas returned to work feeling utterly discouraged. His co-workers were still as warm and welcoming as ever, as though nothing unusual had happened. Not only did his boss not criticize him for being late, he even smiled and invited Andreas to that evening's gathering. This almost perfect level of acceptance only made Andreas feel that everything was becoming even more unreal. Looking at his boss's friendly smile, for the first time Andreas began to waver. Maybe staying here forever and never learning the truth wouldn't be such a bad thing after all. So he began making a genuine effort to fit in with his coworkers, trying to accept everything about this place. He also gradually became more positive about life, but every time he walked past the basement entrance, his footsteps would unconsciously slow down. That lingering feeling of unease kept reminding him that there was still a hidden secret waiting to be uncovered. When the evening gathering finally began, Andreas acted just like everyone else, pretending to enjoy the completely tasteless food. To fully become a part of this place, He let go of the reserve he had carried with him for the past 30 years, and took the initiative to confess his feelings to the beautiful woman beside him. But to his surprise, the people here were unbelievably open-minded. The woman agreed almost without a moment's hesitation. They even went home together that very night. The arrival of love gradually lowered Andreas's guard. He bought the latest model convertible sports car, and personally decorated his new home, doing everything he could to turn this place into the life he had always dreamed of. Everything seemed to be moving toward a happy future. But as they spent more and more time together, Andreas gradually realized that although his girlfriend was always by his side, she never truly cared about his happiness, sadness, or emotions. She always wore the exact same expression, as if she were simply responding according to a predetermined program. Only at that moment did Andreas finally realize that what was truly missing in this place might not be the sense of taste at all. So Andreas's attention gradually began to drift. He found himself becoming increasingly attracted to the warm and beautiful Ingeborg. To his surprise, Ingeborg was just as forward. After work they began going on dates together. They watched movies together and enjoyed delicious ice cream. In a world where nothing felt truly wonderful, Andreas actually experienced what felt like first love, but at the same time he was deeply conflicted. After all, he already had a girlfriend. So he gathered up his courage and asked to break up with her. But to his surprise, his girlfriend wasn't angry at all. Instead, she happily invited him to stay until after her friend's gathering before leaving. Andreas was completely stunned. It felt as though he was the only one who actually cared about the breakup. Although he felt a little uneasy, the thought of being with Ingeborg quickly filled him with excitement again. He invited Ingeborg to an upscale restaurant, ready to officially begin a relationship with her. But what she said left him breaking out in a cold sweat. It turned out he was only one of her many boyfriends. She was dating all of them at the same time. She even asked Andreas with complete seriousness whether he would mind living together with everyone else. Hearing this, Andreas was utterly shocked. He slipped away from the dinner in embarrassment. He wandered aimlessly through the streets. As if guided by fate, he found himself back at that subway station. Watching the couple still chatting affectionately together, he once again thought about his own miserable experience. Andreas jumps onto the tracks once again. But this time, the train miraculously comes to a stop. Just as he tries to get back on his feet, the train suddenly starts moving again. One subway train after another races through the station. Andreas screams in unbearable pain. But no matter how badly he is injured, he always manages to stand up again. Because the truth is, he had already died long ago. So in this seemingly perfect hell, there is no way to experience death a second time. Dragging his body covered in wounds, Andreas makes his way back home. The next morning, his body has completely healed. He has no choice but to continue living this dull and meaningless life. But deep in his heart, he can never forget the secret hidden inside that basement. The next time he passes by, Andreas suddenly hears the laughter of a child. He is instantly overwhelmed with excitement, because there are no children anywhere in this hell. That sound must have come from the human world. So Andreas climbs into the basement. Standing behind the door is the very man he had followed before. Together they walk toward a painting hanging on the wall. From behind it they clearly hear laughter echoing through. Listening to those beautiful voices that sound almost heavenly, smiles finally appear on both of their faces. For the first time in a long while, they experience genuine happiness once again. From that day on, Andreas becomes obsessed with returning to the human world. They gather every tool they can find and work tirelessly every day, determined to break through the thick concrete wall. Day after day, they finally catch a glimpse of hope. Although it is only a tiny hole, through it they once again experience sunlight, music, and even the aroma of food. Desperate, Andreas reaches his hand into the human world. He grabs a loaf of bread from a nearby table. But before he can even take another bite, someone grabs his legs and drags him back out. Even after being pulled away repeatedly, he remains immersed in the unforgettable taste of the bread. Because that single bite once again makes him feel as though he is standing beneath warm sunlight. After Andreas secretly breaks through the wall, the authorities decide to expel him from this world. Since he refuses to accept this empty and lifeless existence, they decide to send him to what they call the real hell. So, Andreas is once again loaded onto the old worn-out bus and sent back to that endlessly desolate world. The hole leading to the human world is sealed shut once again. As though none of this had ever happened, everyone continues acting as if nothing has changed, living their seemingly perfect lives. They may never experience happiness, but neither do they have to suffer pain. Only Andreas is left imprisoned in purgatory, forced to endure the relentless punishment of ice and frost. No one can ever know whether he regrets his choice now. This film serves as a reflection of certain high-welfare societies in the Western world. Surrounded by abundant material comfort, people gradually lose their anxiety and sadness. Life no longer has emotional highs and lows. Desire and ambition are no longer something to strive for. Although everything appears peaceful and comfortable, people have already lost the passion that gives life its meaning. Everything gradually becomes emotionally numb, and in doing so, life loses its true purpose. Perhaps a flawlessly perfect existence like this is the real definition of hell.